So before starting to talk about anything else, I'd like to bring up something I brought up in one of my previous podcasts, that being about Kanye West. As it has been noted, Kanye West has come out strongly against the Democrat agenda and has even called their agenda godless. Well, recently Kanye West has been noted to make some anti-Semitic remarks. And I'm not going to talk about that a whole lot. That's why I said that we got to be careful with Kanye West before we give him our full approval. Nonetheless, I did happen to read those remarks, and I do have to say that even though they do border on anti-Semitic, there are certain things we got to be careful with here because what I kind of gather from what he's saying, and I could be totally wrong on this based on other things he has said, the thing is about the Jewish community at large, and I'm talking ethnically per se. And by the way, I am a huge supporter of the nation of Israel, of Jewish people. By and large, here in America and probably overseas as well, that the Jewish community is far left and they are by far secular. So this isn't about some sort of religious underpinnings that Kanye West just happens to hate Jews. I think that he's had a run-in with some people that are of the bad sort, and I don't want to go too far into that because, again, this is a dicey topic, and like I said, the way that he said it, regardless of what he meant, he should not have put it that way because it's going to get you in trouble no matter what, especially when they're targeting you. Nonetheless, and by the way, before I make this next comment, this is the Bill Seng podcast. I am Bill Seng. It's so great to be here with you tonight. And we got a bunch of topics we're going to be talking about. For the most part, this is going to be a ladies' night. There are a lot of topics that I'm going to be talking about tonight that have to deal with specifically with women. And I am about to launch into certain of those topics right now. But I'm about Kanye West. And just this really hypocrisy from the left, calling him a racist, calling him an anti-Semite, when the people on the left end of the spectrum, I'm talking about people like Barack Obama, Al Sharpton, Jesse Jackson, Jeremiah Wright, all these people that get outraged over anti-Semitism on the right, so to speak, and we're talking about interpretive anti-Semitism on the right, that they embrace people like Louis Farrakhan. Louis Farrakhan belongs to a religion that absolutely wants to wipe out the Jewish race, and yet there's no condemnation from the left against Louis Farrakhan. You look at people like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Rashida Tlaib. You look at, like I said, Jesse Jackson himself has made anti-Semitic remarks. And who is that woman that married her brother? She's a congresswoman, I believe, from Minnesota, I think. Regardless, Ilhan Omar. And yes, she actually did marry her brother, and I believe it was to get entrance into the United States. So I'm not going to go too far into that, but what about these people making these blatant anti-Semitic remarks and never getting called on it? In fact, the people on the right are always supporting the Jewish nation, the nation of Israel, and we are trying to give them as much support as we can because, at the very least, from an ideological standpoint, they are our ideological brothers and sisters. So I just had to get that out of the way with Kanye West because, again, I continue to say, I have to warn you with Kanye West, I think that he's trying to do good right now, but he is not, dare I say, he is not quite as measured in his comments as what Donald Trump is. And that says quite a bit right there. But I do have to say, Donald Trump, he very much knows how to say something and communicate it to his people in such a way that they don't mistake it for something else. Big news inside the Democrat Party again. Tulsi Gabbard decides to leave the Democrat Party. This is huge news. You might remember Tulsi Gabbard. She came on to the national stage during the 2020 election. Is either 2020 election or 2016? I think it was 2020 elections. Because I remembered that as she started speaking against some of her opponents on the debate stage, they started to accuse her of Russian collusion, saying that she was some sort of a Russian spy because she was pointing out these weaknesses of her opponents on the debate stage. And let me find what she had to say here. She had some interesting things to say about the Democrat Party. So Tulsi Gabbard, this is from NBC News right here, where she said, The Democrats of today are hostile to people of faith and spirituality. They demonize the police and protect criminals at the expense of law-abiding Americans. The Democrats of today believe in open borders and weaponize the national security state to go after political opponents. Above all else, the Democrats of today are dragging us ever closer to nuclear war. She also refers to the people in the Democrat Party as a class of elitists, a cabal of elites, I believe is the words that she used. Tulsi is not happy with the Democrat Party. And by the way, I don't intend to make this all about Republicans and Democrats necessarily inside of this podcast, but listen to the words that she said inside of her statement. She said the Democrats of today are hostile to people of faith. Now, I'm a worldview guy. I pay attention to these things. I like systematic theology, and when I study the agenda of the American left, it is anti-God, absolutely, purely, 100% anti-God. Yeah, you got your one-offs here and there that will, and I would say probably a significant base of the Democrat Party will vote for Democratic candidates and support Democratic issues, but that's because they think that the Democrats like the poor, when in fact their policies actually create more poor people than what they bring out of poverty. And every now and then you get a one-off candidate that may, like a Tulsi Gabbard perhaps, that actually is not anti-God. Well, you see how that went. They demonized her, ostracized her, basically ran her out of the party until finally she said, all right, I've had enough. I am no longer a Democrat. By the way, I had mentioned about Kanye West and these accusations of racism against Kanye West. And inside of the New York City Council, there has been a stir about inside of their ranks. A person by the name of Nuri Martinez, who was the president of the city council in I believe New York City, stepped down, had resigned because of racist comments that she had made. Now, I find this fascinating. She stepped down because of the racist comments that she had made. And by the way, what party would you suppose that Nuri Martinez was a part of? You guessed it. She happens to be another Democrat. Now, isn't this fascinating? With somebody like Kanye West, and by the way, he is kind of party ambiguous right now. Nobody knows exactly who he is in a political sense. Kanye West is Kanye West. He is his own entity altogether, and I respect that. And you kind of have to read into and interpret what exactly he's saying. He said something about like that he's going to go all DEF CON, I think it was, on Jews or something. And I'm guessing that he's probably referring to somebody specific in that. You have people like this Nuri Martinez whose statements are so blunt, so blatant in terms of their racism that they themselves choose to step down because of their racism. Now, I wish that the Prime Minister of Canada would do the same thing that, his name slipped my mind all of a sudden. You know, the guy that wears blackface, the Prime Minister of Canada, young guy. Justin Trudeau, that's right, Justin Trudeau in Canada, the Prime Minister, and he has worn blackface on a number of occasions, and I think that he even spoke with a dialect to make himself look, I don't want to say African American because he's Canadian, but blacker by nature. So very fascinating that, and to tell the truth, this Nuri Martinez, I don't know why she bothers stepping down. If she simply apologized or if she just propose some pro-abortion legislation or something like that, that she would get a pass. I have no doubt about that. The Democrats don't have accountability inside of the states that they've run with an iron fist, and New York happens to be one of those. New York City, not the least of which. So I don't know why she bothered to resign. Maybe she decided that she's going to get a promotion or something, because I've seen that happen before, where they do something like this, and all of a sudden, next thing you know, they're promoted. Speaking of New York. So you remember last week or a couple weeks ago, the Democrats were in an uproar, particularly Gavin Newsom. Well, we had a couple of people. There was Gavin Newsom, Barack Obama didn't say anything, but they had started sending illegal immigrants to Martha's Vineyard. Lori Lightfoot and other Democrats had been up in arms because all of a sudden you had illegal immigrants being shipped off to their states, to their cities. And so they thought there was just such a cruel thing that Ron DeSantis and the governor, Greg Abbott, the governor of Texas, would send their illegal immigrants to their cities. How cruel, how heartless. And after all, they brought allegations against them that they were also lying to these illegal immigrants about what to expect once they landed in these cities and in these states, claiming they were promised them employment and all these other things. And all those things turned out not to be true. They didn't find any sort of grounding whatsoever. And, well, you'll be interested to note that all of a sudden there were unaccompanied minors that showed up inside of a New York town, and they were from the border, so illegal immigrants, illegal immigrant children who were sent from the border to this town in New York, Hudson Valley, if I'm not mistaken, about 75 miles north of New York City. This comes from Fox News, by the way. Full disclosure there. And these illegal immigrant children were sent by who? Joe Biden. Isn't that fascinating, people? That one day, Ron DeSantis and his likes were being demonized for sending not children, but adults to cities run by Democrats who supposedly love and embrace the illegal population inside their respective cities and states. And since people like Ron DeSantis and Greg Abbott are governors of states where they have a huge illegal immigration problem, and their populations, by and large, do not want illegal immigrations having a free flow of crossing over the border into their states, they decided that they're going to share the love, spread the wealth, help these other cities and states that embrace the idea of illegal immigration, give them their surplus of illegal immigrants. So how is it that Joe Biden, in his mind, can justify the idea of sending illegal immigrant children, flying them, mind you, from the border to New York town? In fact, there is a person who happened to meet these children who were unaccompanied. I'll just read you part of the article. It says, unaccompanied migrant children arrived on flights to a rural New York community, and local officials said Friday they were given no advance notice by the Biden administration. Montgomery Police Chief Paul Arteta and Mayor Steve Brescia joined Fox and Friends first to explain what happened when the flights arrived at Orange County Airport from Texas, carrying minors between 13 to 18 years old. I've never seen anything like this before, said Brescia, whose town is located in the Hudson Valley about 75 miles north of New York City. So they weren't even expecting this. They have no notification that these illegals were coming to their town, and yet they were flown there. They were dropped off there, and they were, I guess, expected to fend for themselves from there. So, again, I know that it's kind of a moot point because hypocrisy never sticks to the American left, and so I guess we just got to kind of live with it as it is, that's just the standard operating procedure. But America, are you awake yet? Do you see what's happening? The left can do all the things that they tell us that we are not allowed to do. Say, for instance, if they decide to make us wear masks, they don't got to wear masks. Say we got to get vaccines and boosters, they don't got to get vaccines and boosters. Say that we can't go out to dinner parties, visit family, and all these things, well, they can do that. And they can do it without repercussions either. You might be thrown in jail, but they can do whatever they want to. I know that's pretty heavy right there. And what I'd really like to do right now is I got a couple of stories that are outside of politics real fast I'd like to share with you just to kind of wrap up this program for you. And the first one is just a story of interest to me, particularly. I love it when I come across worldview things. I love it when I come across amazing archaeological finds. I love it when I find things that I'll say it supports the Bible, even in many respects. There was a tablet that for the longest time could not be deciphered. It was known to be Babylonian in its origin, but nobody really knew exactly what its purpose was or what it was trying to accomplish. It's 3,700 years old. It's from Babylon. And let me see if I can find this story for you real fast. And the title of this, Ancient Babylonian Tablet May Contain the First Evidence of Trigonometry. Now this is something that is blowing the minds of the scientific community at large and the historical community at large, because who knew that the Babylonians were doing trigonometry, or they actually had a tablet to be able to aid them in trigonometry. And why do I say this supports the Bible? Well, because one, I don't believe in the common evolutionary narrative that mankind started off as ape-like creatures that were dumb and primitive, that couldn't even tie their shoelaces if they had them. But instead, mankind, according to the Bible, was created in the image of God, pre-programmed from the hand of God to be intelligent, to be wise, to have understanding, and that God, I don't know if he told them or if it just came from our programming from the time that he created us, that we were brilliant, even as early on as 3,700 years ago. And so it's incredible to me, and it affirms God's word when I read things about the brilliance of ancient mankind. Let me see. I don't think there's really anything noteworthy for me to point out, other than the fact that I just summed it up right now for you, that the ancient Babylonians, 3,700 years ago, had not just discovered trigonometry, they actually recorded on a tablet trigonometry tables. Absolutely incredible discovery. Which leads to my last story, which is a feel-good story. Unfortunately, I had lost it here, so I'll just kind of describe to you the whole premise of the story. You see, I was just kind of surfing through the internet one day, and you find good news, you find bad news, and all of it has some sort of worldview implications, which I absolutely love and eat up. But then all of a sudden, I saw this picture of this dog sniffing at somebody sitting on a bench, and this was a very fascinating story, because what it was is that the dog was sniffing at their owner. They're on a leash being held by somebody else, and their owner was sitting on a bench. And what had happened, the story behind this all, is that this young lady, she was a teacher, and she had to go overseas, I think for schooling, perhaps, in order to get certified, or I'm not sure exactly what, but it was for her educational purposes. She had to go overseas, and I believe she was gone for about 6 months. Well, she couldn't bring her dog with her, so her dog had to stay at home, and when she finally had the opportunity to make it back, when she was coming back for good, she had the person who was watching her dog take her dog out to the park. And what she was going to do was she was going to find a bench. She was going to kind of hide herself a little bit and see if her dog was able to find her and recognize her. And as the dog is walking, you can tell that, I don't know if the dog was a boy or a girl, by the way, but you can tell that the dog starts catching the scent and starts noticing things about its master. And all of a sudden, it finds her, and her face is tucked away. You can't really know for sure, but then it catches her scent for sure. So it goes up there, gets in her face, starts licking her, and it's just a really nice feel-good story. I know that in terms of world events, it's not the most impactful of things on the planet, but it's nice to see just good things like that. And I believe that was a story from the dodo. I don't know if you're familiar with the dodo. I've seen all sorts of cool little feel-good stories about animals and such on the dodo. I think one of the most tragic and inspirational ones was how this woman found a bee without wings and how she took care of it. I believe it was a bumblebee without wings, and she took it in as a pet for a while. And then one day, as she was taking care of it, feeding it, making sure that it was safe, when it was getting older at the end of its life cycle. She was holding it in her hand. She said she felt the heartbeat just stop all of a sudden. And so the bee had passed away inside of her hand in comfort. And it's like, oh my goodness, really, one of these heartstring feel-good stories. But it's sometimes good to be able to close on something like that, just to see there is good in the world, just to see that people are still enjoying life with all the bad things going on. But you know what? I have to say, lots of good things are happening too, both in a political sense and, dare I say, in a spiritual sense. I like what Kirk Cameron had to say on his show Takeaways, no, it wasn't on Takeaways, it was actually on the Babylon Bee. They interviewed him, and he said that right now, as dark as what things seem inside of our country, that it's actually it's the perfect layout for a spiritual revival inside of our country. And so we got to look at things that way. We can't look at things as being dim and dark and lost. We got to look at things as being full of hope, that there are feel-good stories out there, that there are things to look forward to, and that we can even brighten somebody's day if we are so willing. So, get on Rumble. Get on YouTube. Get on Buzzsprout. Looking for 1,000 subscribers on each. This is the Bill Seng Podcast. My name is Bill Seng. Please jump onto our platforms, check out the show, share it with your friends, and have a great day.